There comes a time in your life when your soul gets tired. Not from work, not from stress, but from explaining. Explaining why you walked away. Explaining why you changed. Explaining why you're not the same version of you that people once got used to. You keep using your energy to justify your healing, but what you really need to do is go silent. Because healing doesn't need a microphone. Healing doesn't need applause. Healing doesn't ask for permission. It happens in the quiet, in the still, in the secret chambers of surrender. And the longer you keep defending who you're becoming to people who are attached to who you were, the longer you delay your deliverance. There is nothing wrong with you for choosing silence. Silence isn't weakness. Silence is strategy. Silence is strength wrapped in wisdom. You don't have to announce your transformation. When a seed breaks through the soil, it doesn't apologize for growing in a new direction, neither should you. Stop explaining why you don't pick up the phone anymore. Stop explaining why you're guarding your peace. Stop explaining why their chaos can no longer live in your atmosphere. Sometimes your elevation requires isolation. And isolation is not punishment, it is preparation. It is God's way of saying, let me do this work in you without the distraction. People will misunderstand you. Let them. They will mislabel your silence as arrogance. Let them. They will say, you've changed, and they're right. You've grown. You've evolved. You've shed the skin of survival, and now you're stepping into the soil of purpose. And the people who can't honor your silence will never be able to handle your sound. Some of the greatest moves God made in your life started when you shut your mouth and let Him speak. You don't need to keep replaying the hurt, defending the decision, or arguing your growth. Growth is loud in silence. Maturity is measured by how little you now feel the need to convince others. There is a profound and often misunderstood power in silence. In a world that constantly demands our voice, our opinion, our reaction, and our justification, choosing silence is not just countercultural, it's deeply spiritual. Silence is not just the absence of sound, it's the presence of clarity. It is not weakness, it is not retreat, it is not a lack of confidence. Silence is strategy. Silence is the sacred sanctuary where healing begins. We live in an age where we are encouraged to explain every move we make. Social media has conditioned us to post, comment, and justify everything. From what we eat to how we feel, from who we support to where we stand. But healing doesn't come from public affirmation. Healing doesn't come from external validation. Healing begins in the secret place. And the secret place is often wrapped in silence. Silence is not about being passive. It's about being intentional. When you are silent, you are not doing nothing. You are doing one of the most important things. You are listening to your soul, listening to your spirit, listening to the voice of God that doesn't yell over the noise, but whispers in the stillness. Healing doesn't shout, it settles. It settles into your spirit like water seeping into dry ground. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to explain it. You simply have to allow it. Too many people delay their healing because they are too busy talking about what happened, talking about who hurt them, talking about why they're angry, talking to defend, explain, and protect their reputation. But what if I told you that you don't owe anyone an explanation? What if the real power was in holding your peace and trusting that your healing is between you and God, not between you and them? Silence is a weapon in spiritual warfare. It confuses the enemy. It frustrates those who expect your response. They want your words to twist, your reactions to fuel drama, your emotions to become your downfall. But when you choose silence, you remove their access. You close the door to manipulation. You reclaim your power. Silence teaches you that not every battle is worth fighting out loud. Some victories are won in the quiet, where no one sees you but heaven takes note. The most dangerous person in the room isn't always the loudest. It's often the one who doesn't need to prove anything. The one who has learned the art of silence, has learned the discipline of restraint. You don't always have to defend yourself. You don't always have to clarify. You don't always have to retaliate. Sometimes the greatest sign of maturity is the ability to say nothing and still stand tall. Healing requires space, and silence creates space. Space to reflect, space to recover, space to realign. When everything around you is loud, your thoughts get crowded. You can't hear yourself think, let alone hear what God is trying to say. But silence allows you to breathe. It brings clarity. It reveals truth that noise often drowns out. You see, there's a time to speak, but there's also a time to be silent. And wisdom is knowing the difference. Too many people speak prematurely. They share wounds that haven't closed. They release emotions that haven't settled. They process pain in public that was meant to be dealt with in private. But silence says, I will not expose what God is still healing. Silence says, this season is sacred, and I won't allow it to be contaminated by outside opinions. Healing in silence allows you to grow without performance. You're not doing it for applause. You're not chasing likes or seeking approval. You're doing it because your soul needs it. And sometimes the most healing thing you can do is go quiet and go inward. Pull back from the noise. Pull back from the crowd. Pull back from the need to be understood and choose to be whole. People will misunderstand your silence. They will misread it as distance. They will assume you've changed, and they'll be right. You have changed. You're becoming. You're evolving. You're no longer available for small talk when your spirit is asking for deep restoration. You're no longer interested in explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes silence is the only answer you need to give. It speaks louder than defense. It communicates boundaries. It protects your peace. And it gives God the space to fight battles you were never meant to fight with words. When you stop talking, God starts moving. When you hold your tongue, heaven responds. Your silence becomes agreement with divine strategy. Do not confuse silence with suppression. It's not about bottling up your pain. It's about choosing your healing over your need to be heard. You're not ignoring what happened. You're choosing to process it in a way that preserves your spirit. You're choosing to trust that your peace matters more than their approval. Every healed person has gone through a season of silence. A season where they were misunderstood, unseen, misjudged, and they didn't explain a thing. They just kept healing, kept growing, kept praying, kept moving forward in quiet confidence. And eventually, the fruit of their healing spoke louder than any explanation ever could. Let your silence be a statement. Let it say, I don't owe you a version of me that no longer exists. Let it say, I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to heal me. Let it say, God is doing something in me that words can't capture. And when the healing is complete, you'll come back stronger. Not to speak for validation, but to testify that silence was part of the miracle. Because healing begins when you choose silence. It begins when you stop giving your pain a microphone and start giving your spirit a moment. The world doesn't need to hear your side. Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them wonder. You've got bigger things to do than explain. You've got a soul to mend, a future to step into, a calling to fulfill. There's a truth about growth that most people don't want to hear. It doesn't come in crowds. It doesn't come with applause. It doesn't come while you're surrounded by noise and constant attention. Real growth, true, deep, soul-level elevation often begins in one of the hardest and most misunderstood places: isolation. It's not a punishment. It's a process. It's not abandonment. It's alignment. It's progress. It's a constant movement. You want more? You want more? When life pulls you away from people, places, patterns, and even platforms, it may feel like rejection, but it's actually redirection. Because sometimes the only way to hear God clearly is to be removed from the very things that were feeding your distractions. You think you've been forgotten, but you've really been set apart. Isolation doesn't mean you're alone without purpose. It means you've been chosen for preparation. You've been separated for something that requires your full attention, your undivided heart, your complete surrender. See, elevation is not just a destination, it's a transformation. And transformations don't happen in front of the crowd. They happen in the cave, in the wilderness, in the quiet places where no one is watching and no one is clapping. We often ask God to take us higher. We pray for elevation, influence, breakthrough, and blessing. But we don't always understand the price of going higher. The higher you go, the thinner the air becomes. The more you elevate, the more you must release. You can't take everyone with you. You can't take old mindsets with you. You can't carry past wounds, toxic relationships, or dead weight into a new dimension. That's why isolation comes before elevation. Because God is doing spiritual pruning. He's cutting off what can't survive in the next level. And if you don't go through isolation, you'll try to elevate with baggage that will weigh you down and eventually cause you to fall. That isolation is your divine safeguard. It's your training ground. It's where God builds the version of you that can handle what you ask for. When you're isolated, it's tempting to feel like something is wrong. You scroll through social media and see everyone connected, laughing, winning, and visible. Meanwhile, you're in the background, quiet, hidden. You may even feel forgotten, but you're not forgotten. You're being formed. God hides what he values. Diamonds are formed in darkness. Seeds break open in the soil. Arrows are pulled back before they launched forward. That hidden place you're in is not a grave. It's a garden. It's not your ending. It's your preparation. You're not being buried. You're being planted, and in due season you will bloom. But only after the isolation does its work. Only after the silence teaches you to hear. Only after you learn to be anchored in identity instead of applause. Some of the most powerful moments in your life will not be the ones you post. They will be the moments when God stripped everything away and set you down. not to punish you, but to position you. Isolation forces you to confront the version of yourself you've been hiding behind people, noise, and busyness. It brings you face to face with your character, your wounds, your habits, your fears. You can't elevate if you're still trying to perform. You can't elevate if you're addicted to being seen. You can't elevate if you're afraid to be still. So God, in His mercy, pulls you away, not to crush you, but to cleanse you, not to harm you, but to heal you. He wants you to elevate from a solid place. He wants you to go higher without falling under the weight of what you haven't yet surrendered. Look at anyone who has been elevated with purpose, and you'll find a season of isolation behind the scenes. Every major shift in destiny is preceded by a hidden season. Moses had the desert. Joseph had the prison. David had the cave. Jesus had the wilderness. These weren't places of punishment. These were places of preparation. And when you understand that, you stop resisting isolation and you start embracing it. It's in the isolation that you hear your calling louder. It's in the isolation that you learn to stand when no one is clapping. It's in the isolation that your roots go deep so your fruit can last. Don't despise the season that stripped you, because it's the same season that will strengthen you. The quiet is not a delay, it's a setup. Elevation without isolation leads to confusion. If you haven't discovered who you are in the quiet, the crowd will define you in the noise. If you haven't been tested in the dark, the light will expose your cracks. God isolates you not to punish you, but to protect your purpose. He slows you down so your soul can catch up. He removes you from the crowd so you can stop performing and start becoming. You don't have to be afraid of this season. You don't have to explain it to everyone. Some people won't understand why you've gone silent, why you've disconnected, why you've stepped back. That's okay. They weren't assigned to this part of your journey. Everyone can celebrate your elevation, but not everyone can handle your isolation. Don't be surprised if the people you expected to walk with you can't endure the quiet with you. It's not about them. It's about what God is doing in you. And when the time is right, you'll come out of this season not just elevated, but equipped. Not just visible, but vision. Not just successful, but spiritually stable. And it will all make sense. So if you find yourself in isolation right now, don't rush the process. Don't force visibility. Don't beg to be seen. Embrace the silence. Lean into the stillness. Ask the hard questions. Sit with the real you. Allow God to refine what the world can't touch. Let Him remove what doesn't belong on the next level. There's a season in every person's life when the shift begins. A season where who you were no longer fits who you're becoming. It's not always loud. It's not always public. Sometimes it begins with discomfort, a quiet restlessness, a divine disruption. You wake up one day and realize that your old habits no longer satisfy. Your old circle no longer inspires. Your old mindset no longer aligns with where your soul is trying to go. That's the beginning of transformation. But here's the truth. Transformation doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for consensus, and it certainly doesn't need validation. You don't need anyone's approval to evolve. You don't need a round of applause to become. You don't need a panel of people to vote on your decision to grow. You don't need a confirmation from the crowd when you've already heard a whisper from God. Too often people stay stuck in outdated versions of themselves because they're afraid to lose the support of those who only like the old version. They hesitate to grow because they fear judgment. They delay their elevation because they're waiting for someone to say, it's okay. But let me tell you, growth doesn't always look pretty. Transformation is not always popular, and the process of becoming who you were created to be is often misunderstood by people who are committed to the comfort of who you used to be. When you begin to transform, people will question you. They will say you're acting different. And they're right. You are different. You're thinking higher. You're moving smarter. You're choosing peace over pettiness, discipline over distraction, purpose over popularity. But those who are only attached to your dysfunction will never be able to celebrate your development. They benefited from your brokenness. They were comfortable with your chaos. And when you begin to shift, their support will shrink. That's okay. Let it. Transformation doesn't need a fan club. It needs faith. It needs obedience. It needs courage. There's a quiet power in changing and not explaining, in evolving and not apologizing, in elevating without needing to broadcast every step of the process. Because the truth is, when you're truly transforming, you're not trying to impress anybody. You're trying to honor the version of you that's finally showing up with clarity and conviction. We live in a time where everything is shared, posted, and liked. But transformation doesn't need to be seen to be sacred. It happens in silence. It happens in solitude. It happens when no one is clapping and no one is watching. It's not for social media. It's not for validation. It's for your calling. It's for your assignment. It's for the healing that your future self is begging you to pursue. You don't have to explain why you don't go to the same places anymore, why you don't entertain certain conversations anymore, why you've started guarding your energy, protecting your peace, and saying no without guilt. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself after years of self-abandonment. You don't owe them a breakdown of your new boundaries. Some things are better left unspoken, because transformation proves itself over time. When a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it doesn't return to explain itself to the other caterpillars. It flies, it lives, it fulfills its purpose. It doesn't waste time convincing others that its wings are real. In the same way, you don't have to convince anyone that your growth is genuine. Let your fruit speak. Let your peace speak. Let your elevation speak. Validation is a trap. It keeps you performing for approval. It keeps you addicted to opinions. It keeps you tied to people who were never meant to walk with you into your next season. And the longer you wait for validation, the more power you give away. The moment you realize you don't need it is the moment you become free. Free to grow without guilt. Free to walk away without explaining. Free to rise without shrinking. Free to build without broadcasting. Free to love yourself without needing others to understand. Because not everyone is meant to understand your transformation. And that's not their fault. It's simply not their assignment. Transformation is personal, it's intimate. It's between you, your wounds, your wisdom, and your Creator. It's forged in fire, built in brokenness, birthed in surrender. And when God starts the work in you, he's not asking for outside approval. He's asking for your agreement. Your yes is more powerful than their maybe. People may mock your process, but they can't deny your progress. They may question your silence, but they'll have to respect your stability. They may not recognize you anymore, and that's good, because you didn't survive all that trauma, all that confusion, all that heartbreak just to stay the same. You're supposed to look unrecognizable when healing takes place. You're supposed to walk different, talk different, and choose different. And while others are looking for proof, you're living it. You're walking evidence of grace. You are the testimony. Your peace is the loudest message. Your joy is the loudest sermon. You don't need to talk about it. You are it. So stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Stop waiting to be validated before you evolve. Stop explaining your transformation to people who were never meant to understand your vision. You are not who you used to be, and that's a good thing. You are shedding layers, breaking patterns, disrupting cycles. And if that makes people uncomfortable, let them adjust or move aside. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need applause to keep going. You don't need validation to become. You simply need to keep walking in truth. Keep obeying the still, small voice inside. Keep choosing you over and over again, even when it's lonely, even when it's silent, even when it's hard. Because in the end, transformation that needs validation isn't real change, it's performance. And you weren't made to perform, you were made to evolve, to grow, to heal, to rise, to break generational chains, to stand in power and purpose. And that kind of transformation is too sacred to be explained. It's too holy to be voted on. It's too divine to be voted down for the comfort of others. There's a point in life when you learn that not everything requires a response. Not every accusation deserves an answer. Not every situation needs your commentary. Some things are better handled not with your voice, but with your peace. In a world addicted to noise, silence is often mistaken for weakness. But silence wrapped in peace, that's strength beyond understanding. When your heart is at peace, you don't have to fight for position. When your mind is settled, you don't have to prove a point. When your soul is anchored, you don't need the last word. Peace will speak for you. Peace is not passive. Peace is power under control. Peace doesn't mean you agree with injustice, tolerate abuse, or ignore reality. Peace means you've chosen a higher response. It means you've placed the battle in hands greater than yours. It means you understand that your dignity is not found in how loud you shout, but in how calm you remain when the storm rages. Let peace speak louder than the insults. Let it speak louder than the drama. Let it speak louder than betrayal, disappointment, and disrespect. Because the more at peace you are within, the less you need to react to what's going on around you. That doesn't mean you don't feel the sting of what was said or done. It means you've matured beyond the need to prove your peace by losing your peace. It takes discipline to stay calm. It takes emotional strength to walk away. It takes spiritual maturity to be still while everything around you tries to pull you into chaos. But that stillness isn't apathy, it's wisdom. That calm isn't detachment, it's discernment. Because sometimes the greatest display of power is found not in reaction, but in restraint. You don't need to argue with people who are determined to misunderstand you. You don't have to defend yourself against every lie, every rumor, or every false assumption. Your life, your fruit, your consistency, your peace will say everything your words could never explain. And when your peace speaks, it speaks with authority. It speaks from a place that can't be shaken by circumstances or swayed by opinion. When you have peace, you stop chasing closure. You stop looking for validation. You stop needing revenge. You realize that peace is the closure. Peace is the proof that you've healed, the sign that you've grown, the evidence that you've surrendered control and stepped into trust. That's what makes peace so powerful. It's not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of confidence that says, I know who I am. I know who my God is. And I know I don't need to fight battles that aren't mine. Sometimes God will test you not with a storm, but with silence. Not with conflict, but with chaos around you, just to see if you'll let your peace speak for you. Will you try to fix everything with your words? Or will you trust that there's a language higher than human logic? Because peace is divine communication. It says what your voice can't. It moves when your hands can't. It works when your words fall short. You'll know you've grown when your first reaction is no longer to argue, but to breathe, to pray, to pause. You'll know you're healing when you choose peace over proving a point. When you stop replaying the conversation in your mind. When you stop planning your comeback. When you realize you don't need to win the argument to win your future. Some people thrive off of reaction. They need your attention to feel powerful. They want your rage to fuel their narrative. They seek your energy to validate their drama. But when you stay in peace, you remove their access. You protect your energy. You preserve your joy. You declare with your silence that they no longer have the authority to pull you out of character. Peace is the fruit of self-control. It's the product of wisdom and faith. It's what happens when you finally believe that you don't have to defend every part of your story, that you don't have to be loud to be heard, that you don't have to be seen to be significant. Peace is what happens when you internalize the truth that God can do more with your stillness than you can do with your striving. Let peace speak when you're misunderstood. Let it speak when you're hurt. Let it speak when people walk away. Let it speak when they question your silence, your distance, your decisions. You don't owe them an explanation. If they can't hear your heart, your words won't help them. If they can't respect your silence, they won't understand your voice. You are not obligated to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to clarify your healing to those committed to your history. You don't have to exhaust yourself trying to be understood by people who only listen to respond. Let your life speak. Let your peace testify. Let your transformation echo louder than any defense you could mount. When Jesus stood before his accusers, he didn't argue. He didn't try to prove who he was. He stood in silence, not because he didn't have the words, but because he was the Word. His peace was his posture. His silence was his power. And that same spirit rests on you. You don't have to shout to be anointed. You don't have to clap back to be victorious. You're stepping into a season where your peace is your platform, where your quiet confidence is your announcement, where your joy, your stability, your stillness will turn heads more than your words ever could. And when people ask, why aren't you saying anything? Tell them this, because my peace is saying everything. Let peace speak for the places you've healed. Let it speak for the battles you've overcome. Let it speak for the wisdom you've gained. Let it speak for the time you've spent in the presence of God, learning not how to shout louder, but how to stand stronger. Because peace doesn't need an audience. Peace is the evidence that the storm didn't break you. It may have shaken you, but you stayed rooted. You stayed planted. And now, as the winds die down and the dust settles, you're still here. Not bitter, not broken, not bruised, but peaceful. There comes a point in your life when the need to explain, justify, or defend your process becomes more of a burden than a necessity. You reach a place in your journey where the energy it takes to constantly prove your growth, validate your decisions, and explain your pain becomes too expensive for your peace. And it's in that moment when you stop defending your journey that healing truly begins. For too long, you've been trying to make others understand the steps you've taken. You've gone back and forth explaining why you had to walk away from some relationships, why you needed to change your environment, why you stopped engaging in certain behaviors. You've poured yourself out, trying to convince people that your growth isn't arrogance, your silence isn't anger, and your distance isn't rejection, it's protection. But the truth is, no matter how well you explain, some people will still misunderstand you. Some will only see your actions through the lens of their own limitations. And trying to make them see differently will only slow down the work God is doing in you. You don't owe anyone a step-by-step commentary on your healing. Your healing is not a debate. Your growth is not a group project. Your journey is personal and sacred, and often misunderstood by those who never had to fight the battles you fought. So why continue giving explanations to people who were never there for your breaking? If they weren't present for the pain, they don't get to judge the process. When you stop defending your journey, you stop bleeding for those who can't appreciate your scars. You stop diminishing your healing just to prove they exist. You stop diminishing your healing just to make others comfortable with your progress. Healing isn't about pleasing others. It's about making peace with yourself.